World events have been gathering frenetic pace of late. From the global mist of chaos, various governmental insiders have surfaced. Up from the digital sphere, the website 4chan has been a de facto preferred method for releasing seismic intelligence to the world. The insiders are chronicling the internal covert struggles of the USA. Its power, potency and reach, if true, will shake the wider global covert establishment to the core. 4chan is an English-language image board which borrows similar ideas from platforms operating in Japan, which exists simply to exchange images and discuss the culture of manga and anime. It was launched in 2003 and continues to operate within cult circles. It was quickly adopted by a variety of internet subcultures and activists. Mainstream opinion considers it a hotbed of libertarian thinking and the digital space whereby the global movement of Anonymous was conceived. People are able to post in 4chan anonymously. Users are simply known as Anons. The uninitiated or unawakened outside of 4chan are known as normies. A recent notable Anon claiming to be an FBI insider, named Mega Anon, was widely credited by 4chan Anons and the wider truth community as genuine. Mega Anon's writing style was highly charged, combative, but gained interest after predicting the Hillary Clinton email release on WikiLeaks that implicated John Podesta and other senior politicians in potential paedophilia and corruption. Occasionally trolls pretend to be insiders, disclosing misleading or false information. This is referred to by the Anons as LARPing. This stands for live action roleplay. Towards the end of October, another insider surfaced on 4chan from the politically incorrect section, abbreviated as POL. The thread was called CBTS, Calm Before the Storm, and refers to Trump's cryptic message to a journalist during a photo call in which he spoke about calm before the storm. Q started posting and quickly gained interest from Anons, openly discussing Trump's plan for widespread exposure of all levels of corruption. Some of Q's intelligence has been verified in the mainstream news media. But more interestingly, Q released timestamped photos allegedly looking out of the window of Air Force One mid-flight, disclosing the location and flight path of the president's plane during Trump's recent state visit to Asia. One other standout example verifying Q's credentials was a photo of Trump's inner team on Air Force One, giving the thumbs up in a rough Q shape. But more importantly, the name of the JPEG file itself contained Do It Q. At the start of Q's releases, Mega Anon was surprised another insider had come forward, but generally, Mega endorsed Q's initial disclosures. By mid-November, Mega Anon had turned on the information, advising researchers Q had been co-opted, and now the intel should be classed as disinformation. Q's style is cryptic and generally surmounts the one-line questions with the expectation that Anons will piece together the breadcrumbs and join the dots. It's been true citizen open-source journalism at its best. Some Anons have mentioned that the way that Q tailors the post is designed to avoid computer algorithms of the CIA, but still remain understandable to human eyes. There's much discussion over who Q actually is. Is it a man? A woman? Is it Trump himself? Or maybe Dan Scavino, the White House's director of social media? Some Anons have theorised Q is maybe potentially a very sophisticated AI chatbot. Although this seems unlikely, it is our opinion that a team of people is working on these intelligence releases. One Anon raised a very valid point. Why release information as questions? Why not clearly say what exactly is going on? Q responded by saying sniffer progs would kill the site. Everything has to be carefully crafted and tooled prior to release. Overall, Q's intelligence is explosive and details an internal shadow war between the military and what Q calls the three-letter agencies, such as the CIA, FBI, NSA, and probably many more. The concepts discussed on the thread go way beyond mainstream thinking. Q's audit intel covers individuals, political parties, activists, countries, mainstream media, Silicon Valley, SpaceX, banking cabals, child trafficking, and satanic rituals. The corruption seemingly gets deeper and more twisted and bizarre. Even though Q is allied to Trump and his inner circle, early on, Q firmly stated the investigation is unbiased and looking at both Democrats and Republicans in the US political system. This leads to a very important point that we should all be mindful of. Although it is presented as non-partisan, these alleged actions are now potentially militaristic in nature, and for now heavily focused on the Democratic side, with little information concerning the neocons who dragged the US and the rest of the Western world into conflict with Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, and now more recently Syria, or anything concerning the powerful subversive lobbying force of Israel with its Zionist intentions. But again, maybe this investigation will expand into these other groups at a later date. It's always healthy and balanced to view all potential political motivations. We should all tread extremely carefully and deeply consider the validity of this information. There is so much content to comb through, potentially thousands of sifting through and decoding its meaning. It's so close to initial release, it's hard to have a complete truth and clarity on the subject. One further caveat: Q has concluded that disinformation is real, disinformation is necessary, which insinuate to guarantee operational success. Not everything may be true, to potentially thwart deep state opponents as a countermove. We will cover Q's topics in brief. Unfortunately, it's impossible to cover everything. The scope is so vast. To easily understand the releases, we've grouped the intel together in loose paraphrased categories. On numerous occasions, Q writes about the wizards and the warlocks, an insider term. They resolve not to allow any more evil satanic forces to take over the US government ever again. It all starts to reveal itself as a modern-day spiritual war, with right-wing Christian conservative generals against various cabal factions, with satanic belief systems, and a hideous predilection towards child sexual abuse and sacrifice, and potentially hardline Islamists from the Middle East. Q has stated that there are just under 10 people who really know the full global picture, and 3 of these are non-military. At present, not everything can be made public, because it implicates other world leaders and political systems across the globe. He described how Soros, the Clintons, the Obamas, and even Putin are controlled by 3 families. The 4th family has already been removed, post-Trump's inauguration, which points towards the latest regime change and arrests in Saudi Arabia. Q further warns US citizens to expect another false flag, as the cabal is allegedly taken down. In reference to Donald Trump, Q posed the question: why would a billionaire with a thriving business, money, and a family want to run for president and risk his own life and that of his family? Is it because he's tired of countries and various races from being kept poor and abused? Can't he stand the thought of any more mass murder in the honour of Moloch, the god of child sacrifice, with law enforcement and civic leaders turning a blind eye? Q states Trump was actually asked to run for president and implores people to consider why he's surrounded by some of the most respected military generals. And why is he always apparently 5 steps ahead? Is military intelligence strategically influencing Trump, if not directing him completely? Q further discusses the special treatment that nations such as China and Russia have given Trump, especially on a recent trip to China. Trump was granted the honour of dining in the Forbidden City. This has never been granted to any head of state before. Within the alternative media, there is widespread discussion that there are currently 4,000 and counting sealed indictments waiting to be actioned. No one knows the contents or who they are destined for. This news should be considered in light of key political figures Q lists. For the majority, Q defines many of the individuals as puppets to a much larger overt and covert entities. Q writes that Trump and military intelligence are now working closely together with full access to state secrets that can be used against the 3-letter agencies, such as the FBI, CIA, and NSA. Within some military circles, it is well known the CIA have benefited from bottomless budgets, whilst being involved in drug and people trafficking. The military, as a result, is acutely hostile to the agency. Rumours are circling that the military are on high alert to deal with potential civil unrests, once the truth is released into the mainstream. According to Q, the National Guard have been called up across 12 US cities. Q disclosed that historically in the 1950s and 60s, the National Guard and even federal troops carried out planned infiltration of schools to quell civil disorder after the death of Martin Luther King. Q appears to insinuate that groups such as Antifa have been compromised by various forces to preempt any future civil conflict. There is talk of a chaotic event called the Storm, when the supposed truth and arrests will occur. Q indicates that all news organisations will be taken offline. The emergency broadcast system will be activated. Q claims this is to counteract the corrupt, evil narrative that the mainstream media delivers to the majority of the population. Q further details that there are 4 aircraft carriers and escorts currently in the Pacific, ready for the storm, in order to prevent any potential hostile state actors from disturbing the US during the transition. Could there be civilian public trials at the Supreme Court? Q has alleged this is a distinct possibility. This raises the question whether this ties into the 4,000 sealed indictments on record. The electoral system in the US is put under enormous scrutiny by Q. He questions how many electronic voting systems are actually owned by George Soros, and considers the US election as deeply corrupt. Most official activities, people are required to present an ID, but voting in US elections doesn't require any form of identification. Q regularly poses questions on George Soros. Why did he recently donate the majority of his money to a non-profit? Q considers, where did $18 billion go? In the mainstream, it was reported that Soros has recently sold his stakes in Facebook, Twitter, Apple, and Snapchat. Why is this? Could this be seen as a protectionist move to counteract any future attack on his power and influence? Barack Obama around the world is generally highly respected, so some of the allegations, if proven true, are truly explosive. Q advises that Obama's pre-political life was heavily financed by Prince Al-Waleed of Saudi Arabia. Q further alleges Obama has connections to the Muslim Brotherhood, which Q stresses is not a terrorist organisation. As the narrative unfolds, Saudi Arabia turns out to be a huge key topic in the Q Chronicles. Q states that whilst in office, Obama and the rest of the cabinet had aliases and regularly communicated with Hillary Clinton through the now infamous private email server. Is this why she was never been previously charged? Because it would have implicated the former president. It's now widely known that the Citigroup sent a memo to Obama suggesting names for his future government cabinet. Every single suggested Citigroup appointment was honoured by the former president. It should be further highlighted that the recently arrested Prince Al-Waleed has a huge financial stake in Citigroup. One question that comes up frequently in Q's intel is the amount of money various senators and former presidents receive in and out of office, and questions where these revenue streams come from. Q highlights the recent purchase of the Obama's new home after leaving the White House, and the high cost of the property. Can this be reconciled with his previous earnings? As a result of detailed research from the Anons, it was uncovered Tony Podesta, one of the main controversial figures in the Pizzagate scandal, was actually a paid lobbyist for both Saudi Arabia and Russia. He was also helped to facilitate the Iranian One scandal for the Obama administration. Q has also confirmed that Podesta was indicted on the 6th of November. This hasn't been confirmed in the mainstream media, although it is announced that the Podesta group was shutting down, and Tony Podesta hasn't been seen in public since. Early on, Q posed the question, who is protecting Hillary Clinton? It is well known reading the WikiLeaks emails that the Clintons are very close to the Rothschilds, especially Linda Rothschild. But as world events have continued, has this protection been rescinded? The Clinton Foundation is heavily covered by Q updates. It points towards a long-term investigation into the Clinton Foundation by the FBI and military intelligence. The investigation looks at the amount of money donated to the Clinton Foundation to help the crisis in Haiti. But how much was siphoned off into the Clintons' own personal purse? Even more disturbingly, is the Clinton Foundation implicated in child sex trafficking? And do they have financial links with North Korea after Bill Clinton travelled to assist the supposed release of a captured American journalist with John Podesta and others? During the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton was directly inciting war with Russia over the pretense that Trump and his team had been colluding with Russia to help win the election. Currently, an alleged alternative picture is emerging of Hillary Clinton, her husband, and the wider Obama administration accepting bribes for selling uranium to the very country she was accusing of collusion and interference. It's been documented Bill Clinton accepted $500,000 into the Clinton Foundation account and had an impromptu meeting with Vladimir Putin. Huma Abedin, vice chair of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign and former wife of Anthony Weiner, who was charged with sending obscene material to a minor. Huma, according to Q, was also covertly charged and indicted on the 6th of November. Q discloses Huma has family ties with Saudi Arabia and allegedly the Muslim Brotherhood. Nancy Pelosi is the Democratic minority leader of the House of Representatives. As with other political figures, Q flags Pelosi's net worth, and questions have arisen over her fading memory. Some commentators have been baffled by recent erratic public appearances. Q theorises this is a direct tactic to avoid future prosecution. John McCain, one of the Republican Party's harshest, most vocal critics of Donald Trump, Q again questions McCain's net worth and that of McCain's foundation. Q speculates whether John McCain ever really had surgery for a brain tumour. Was this again, like Pelosi, a cover for future prosecution? Q ponders why the Bush family came out against Trump and discloses that they have had a hand in geopolitics and the deep state as far back as World War I. MS-13 is an international criminal gang. Q frequently refers to them. Q lists MS-13 as a priority. They appear to be hired expendable foot soldiers, utilised in political assassinations, who can then be eliminated after the job is complete. Q considers Seth Rich, who was allegedly involved in the release of Hillary Clinton's emails to WikiLeaks, as a potential victim of this policy. At the time, 2 Mexicans were found murdered in a car close to where Seth Rich was gunned down from a supposed botched robbery. There's been much discussion amongst the Anons that this is the real reason for Trump's harsh crackdown on criminal gangs in the US. Islamic State, who seemingly came out of nowhere and under the guise of trying to create a caliphate, to areas of Iraq and were marching ever closer to the centre of Syria. People have considered ISIS a proxy army used to destabilise the Middle East, and Q again takes aim at Barack Obama for not allowing the military to destroy ISIS, and poses the question, who formed and funds ISIS? Why is namely Russia and other global elements now fighting back? In reference to the United Kingdom, Q hints at the death of GCHQ MI6 spy that was found dead, zipped up in a bag in 2010. According to the Sun newspaper, he had been recently tasked with hacking into data on Bill Clinton. Q delves deeper into UK affairs with the infamous death of Diana, Princess of Wales, and creates a connection between senior royal figures and the Mayor of London. It should be noted that there are 2 different mayors in London, the recently newly formed democratically elected political mayor and the Lord's Mayor, which supposedly is a largely ceremonial position, with close links to the City of London. The City of London is immune from the usual laws and regulation of the rest of the United Kingdom. Which type of mayor and individual Q is referring to is unclear at this time. In reference to Germany, the central powerhouse of the European Union, Q takes aim at Angela Merkel and suggests Anons to explore more deeply her family history, and more specifically her immigration policy, which has been controversial for some in Germany, but also the wider European Union. Q also delves further back in time to World War II, suggesting Anons to research into secret societies, and more specifically Hitler's rise to power. Was he merely a puppet? Who was his handler? Of all the countries, Saudi Arabia features very heavily in Q's intel by cryptically stating, Saudi Arabia is primary, US is secondary. Q draws a very close relationship between Hillary Clinton and Saudi Arabia, and alleges the Clinton Foundation needed to reimburse funds from the foundation back to the country due to Hillary's lost election. Some Anons have made the following alleged analysis of the political situation in Saudi Arabia, with the 32-year-old Saudi Prince Mohammed Salman next in line to the throne, succeeding his father, King Salman. The prince is a reformer, and with the king, some Anons speculate that he met with Donald Trump to hatch a deal due to the rapidly falling oil profits. Anons speculate as part of the deal, Saudi Arabia would be allowed to float their oil organisations on the New York Stock Exchange. In return, Trump pressurised them to allow women to drive and also tell Saudi Arabia to stop funding US politics and, controversially, also ISIS. This could be a reason why ISIS has crumbled so rapidly in recent weeks. But of course, this is all pure speculation at this time. It's possible this new alleged policy was not well received by some members of the Saudi royal family. Namely, Prince Al-Waleed and other allied princes were hostile to their loss of influence in the US and for the severing of Islamic State's alleged funding. This dynamic potentially feeds into the Las Vegas shooting incident earlier in October. Could this be why Prince Al-Waleed and others were recently arrested? In reference to the mass arrests, Q strangely hinted that there are now elements of the US National Guard currently embedded in Saudi Arabia at this very moment. Q specifies that for the first time in history, one of the key global centres of covert power, has been taken down. There's been speculation from Q concerning the net worth of the lone gunman, Stephen Paddock. Apparently, the only key witness to Paddock's involvement in the mass shooting was a security guard. Q claims the guard is actually an MS-13 gang member and had only recently been cleared for his security guard's license. Survivors of the Las Vegas shooting have alleged there was more than one gunman. Some of these survivors have been dying randomly as a result of the opposition to the official narrative. Q drills down deeper and poses questions like who owns the top floor of the MGM hotel where the alleged shooting occurred. After research, the top floors are joint owned by Bill Gates and the recently arrested Saudi Prince Al Waleed. At the time, the young reformer Prince Mohammed bin Salman was in Las Vegas on the very day of the shooting. Anons have suggested that the mass shooting was a botched attempt to assassinate the young prince due to the new Saudi foreign policy. The prince was quickly extracted by security services and was seen wearing civilian clothing. The assassination team had met Stephen Paddock early that day. Some Anons claim Paddock was actually an arms dealer, hence why there was such a large cache of weapons in Paddock's hotel room. Upon realising the prince had already escaped, the assassins panicked, killed Paddock, and indiscriminately started firing into the crowd below. It's a wild theory and does correlate, but again is completely unsubstantiated. Q hangs some very large question marks over the official narrative of 9/11, such as who financed 9/11. Q listed that Osama bin Laden has direct connections with Saudi Arabia. At the time of the attacks, members of bin Laden's own family were in the US. After the attacks, all planes were grounded, apart from one, which left US soil with bin Laden's family on board. Q queries what were they delivering. Q further alleges that George Bush Jr. and Sr. were connected to 9/11 in some way. Also, the CIA was strangely tasked to locate bin Laden. Questions remain, why was he killed immediately upon capture? Q is continually scathing towards the mainstream narrative and media. Q regularly cites Operation Mockingbird, a widely known operation to control the narrative in the media after the death of JFK, by embedding up to 400 operatives across the news media. Q states that the CIA operates inside MSM to this very day, and is especially active within the reporting of politics. But the wider question is asked, who owns the media? What is their agenda? And why is any website or publication that is not part of this elite mainstream clique tarred as conspiracy or even fake news? Q has much to say concerning social media platforms based in Silicon Valley. Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Reddit are all owned by larger entities within the deep state. This has influenced the choice of platform and defines why 4chan has been the preferred method for this huge citizen investigation, specifically due to its independence. There is a huge connection between Saudi Arabian money and social and media networks in the US. One example hinted towards involves Rizvi Transverse Management, which has invested heavily in platforms like Twitter, Snapchat, Playboy, and even SpaceX. Notably, a major client of Rizvi is Prince Al Waleed. It's important to highlight Twitter recently went public, and from mid-December, Twitter will begin tracking you regardless whether you have selected cookies to be on or off. Through your browsing history, Twitter reserves the right to ban users based on the websites that they have visited. Q turns the crosshairs on Google, who back in 2004 acquired a 3D mapping tool known as Keyhole, which was part owned by the CIA and NGA. Keyhole's main client is the US military and intelligence agencies. The CIA directly assisted in the acquisition of the mapping startup. According to Q, SpaceX has received up to $4.9 billion in subsidies. Again, Rizvi is a huge investor. Questions will be asked if this information is confirmed. Why did Obama during his tenure scrap the space shuttle program, given his personal links to some of the investors in SpaceX? He also draws a bizarre connection between SpaceX and North Korea, which is interesting because Forbes wrote an article christening Elon Musk as Rocket Man, which is exactly what Trump called Kim Jong-un. So is Trump potentially trolling with covert knowledge? Q summarises the key covert financial centres of power and tyranny. The first is the House of Sword from Saudi Arabia. is one of the largest with an estimated fortune of $4 trillion. And if Q's intel is proven right, the largest cabal just endured a direct counterstrike by opposing forces. The Rothschilds have 2 trillion, and Soros has 1 trillion. Q hints at some of these families even have a hand in inflaming tensions to assist the breakout of World War I and II. Yes, agreed, this information is unbelievable, but this is what Q has disclosed. The Rothschilds are one of the oldest cabal families. It's widely known they own the US central bank, the Federal Reserve. Q draws a wild connection between the Titanic disaster and the Rothschilds gaining control over the Fed. Q discusses how key individuals who were opposed to the Fed's acquisition by the banking family were mysteriously given passage on the Titanic, which then obviously sank, thereby giving the family the opportunity to take full control over the Federal Reserve, with little opposition. The controversy doesn't end there, with Q insinuating that the Wall Street crash of 1929, the Rothschilds designed and implemented World War I to specifically steady financial markets and assert more power and influence over the global monetary system. Q went on to break down how the Rothschilds manipulate politics with weaponized honeypots and sex tapes, designed to entrap politicians, providing the Rothschilds leverage to control them for the duration of their political careers. The Anons are led by Q to investigate the recent helicopter crash on the Rothschilds' estate in England, which apparently was a failed operational strike. A well-respected helicopter pilot, Captain Greensky, carried out a counter-strike. The Anons highlight an unusual 30-minute radar blackout. Greensky was involved in some kind of airborne altercation, but Q reports the mission unfortunately failed, and Greensky sadly died. The Anons considered that maybe the Rothschilds, and namely Linda Rothschild, may have turned on the Clintons. So the former presidential dynasty could now be exposed and unprotected. Q maintains that the Rothschilds' need for symbolism and ritual will be their downfall. Q refers to the infamous leaked photographs from the Rothschilds' 1972 family costume party. They considered gold-painted skin to be symbolic and godlike, as did the ancient Egyptians. Owl symbolism is very important to them. A large owl statue known as Moloch is found in Bohemian Grove. It stands as an effigy, the god of child sacrifice. Other examples of owl symbolism can be found around the world, in the most unlikely and disturbing of places. Q moves the investigation into some very dark areas of pervading covert power. Q confirms that high-level profile political leaders worldwide worship Satan, along with disclosing that these elites participate in spirit cooking, and even more disturbingly engage in child sexual abuse and ritual sacrifice. Vladimir Putin has stated the New World Order worships Satan. Jeffrey Epstein, who was in prison for paedophilia, has close ties with individuals such as Bill Clinton, Kevin Spacey, and even the UK's Prince Andrew, to name a few. Q points towards a strange multicoloured building in Epstein's private island. Q suggests this is a temple with many excavated levels below the building. Q writes that all the disclosures, the level of releases is like symbolically flying at a very comfortable altitude of 40,000 feet. Q advises he could go higher, further down the rabbit hole, but this would risk the public completely turning off from the information, due to the shocking nature of how much humanity has been lied and deceived for so long.